Just to learn. I haven't done it
She was very rock and she had a small and it was just going at it. Like this 10 years
Namanda, 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 Namanda.
morning, everybody. Ohayou gozaimasu. Welcome to today's family service. My name is Morgan Hashimoto, and I will be the chairperson for today. We will begin this morning's service with Sambujo on pages 24 and 25. Now we will have sutra chanting, Jusei Ge, on page 93.
Say 所実法苦行未消門政府上昇学利欲人少年長英修門行四愚無常道一生天人師人力現代公不生無才道少女三苦名交際集約難会議支援滅死根門閉塞小悪道通達全宗門高僧上満僧利用老死法日月集中期天候本不限一周解放僧法制苦毒法情大集中説法施施苦苦行一切仏具足修徳本願礼質上満徳理三概要如仏無限死通達未不詳願覚営利投資最小損志願脈効果大聖の感動北昇天に当知妙見
Please stand for the Gatha Nambutsu 1 on page 169 and remain standing for the reading of the three treasures on page 8.
three treasures, number 1. Hard is it to be born into human life. Now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the teachings of the Blessed One. Now we hear it. If we do not realize the truth in this life, when will it be realized? Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we absorb ourselves in the principle of the way to enlightenment and awaken in ourselves the supreme will. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we be submerged in the depths of the doctrine and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we live in harmony in the great assembly as disciples of Buddha and be free from all hindrances, becoming units of true accord in the life of harmony, in a spirit of universal oneness, free from the bondage of selfishness. Even through myriad ages of kalpas, hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful doctrine. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of Tathagata's teachings. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda. Please be seated.
Now Reverend Fujimoto will share a Dharma message with us.
Good morning. Ohayo gozaimasu. Today I have a story to share. I found this story about a high school class and their substitute teacher. So it had me smiling, so I thought I would share it with you. And it has to do with compassion. So we're going to talk a little bit about compassion. Compassion and bowing. Compassion. Relative compassion and infinite compassion. Bowing. There's self-centered bowing and other-centered bowing. Okay? So we're going to talk about these. My grandfather, he farmed areas in Brawley, California, Guadalupe, and Santa Barbara. And some of those places, I just know the names. I've been to Santa Barbara, but I don't really know the other two places. But I remember a story my mom shared, that they had gone to a funeral and someone in the community had passed away. And at the end of the funeral service, my grandfather turned to my mom and he said, it made him sad to see grown men who didn't know how to put their hands together and bow in Gassho. They looked a little bit awkward, unpracticed. Maybe they weren't familiar with the ways of the temple. So a little bit hesitant and not so cleanly being able to come up, offer incense, put your hands together and bow. But he couldn't imagine how much was missing in their lives that they never learned to bow like this. So he just mentioned this and talked it, reflecting upon the service. So this made me think, how do we learn to bow? And I remember when I was very, very young, small, and you see it all the time. When you come to the temple, I had no choice. My father was the minister. So I come here, everybody's bowing, right? But I was thinking, why should I bow? None of my friends bow. You know, you go to school, nobody bows, only at the church. So it's only older people that bow. So even when we did bow, it's like we're faking it, pretending, okay? Emulating someone else. I would pretend that I was Japanese instead of American, right? And maybe pretending to be a samurai or a kung fu master, or meeting the Queen of England or something. So we do this posture, and the content comes later, right? I think this is the same for all of us. And one of the best models for me was my grandmother. We'd go to Los Angeles every summer when my father would have a couple weeks off and stay there at Grandma's house, and I would sleep in the living room in the makeshift bed. And she'd come out from her room in the morning and just shuffle over. She'd have her home slippers on and shuffle over to the home Obotsidan altar and hit the king, king, and hands together. Namanda, namanda. But no pretense. She would just go up there. And so when you see someone bow without pretense, then you kind of understand that's what it's supposed to be. You get a glimpse, just a glimpse of what it should be. Humility is there. So in thinking about humility, that humility is not an understanding, but an awareness. Awareness of all these causes and conditions received, completely unearned. Air, water, love, things that we didn't earn, but we received this kind of daily, okay? And these causes and conditions are what we are calling Amida's compassion. Amida's compassion coming to us from beyond the human realm. Okay? So beyond the human realm means beyond this relative realm of ego-centered doings. Okay? So all these conditions constantly received, and when we recognize this, there's humility, awareness, Shinjin, the mind of Buddha entered. There's a saying in Eastern cultures that when the rice plant is ripe, the head bows. The rice isn't ready when it's young, but after a full life and all the proper conditions, the rice becomes ripe, full, and heavy, naturally bowing. So many of you know I spent the first part of my time as a minister at Idaho, Oregon Buddhist Temple, Sharman's Temple, and a lot of the farmers there, they grow wheat. The same thing, right? The wheat starts to grow, and it's green and straight and tall, green and vibrant, okay? And then after a while, the heads become heavy, and the green starts to fade. They start to yellow, golden color, and the head bows. And that's when they know the wheat is ready. They cut all the heads off and they harvest. Okay? So I think when we come to the temple, we learn to bow. We see each other's examples. You see sensei's examples. You see other senseis, one after another. Different senseis come and serve at the temple. The elders, they have experience, and you see this. You come and you kind of learn the distinction between individual bowing, self-centered bowing, and other-centered bowing. And you learn the distinction of relative individual compassion, infinite compassion of Amida. Okay? And there's a distinction between arrogance and humility. Okay, so here's the story about the substitute teacher. And it's told by a teacher. And he's saying, one of my most memorable moments as a high school teacher happened not in my own class, but in that of a colleague's. A friend who taught a class in world religion called in sick one day, and I was asked to cover her class during my free period. As a substitute teacher, I simply took roll and introduced the guest speaker, a Jewish rabbi who was scheduled to speak to the class that day. So he did this, and he just sat in the back of the room and observed the class as it went on. He said, I'll never forget that rabbi or that class. A very old man, he worked his way to the front, to the podium, looked at the room full of 16-year-old students, and began by saying, I can guess what many of you might be thinking. My God, this man is old. How can he begin to relate to us? What can he possibly say that we'll find interesting and relevant to us? So he smiled. The rabbi smiled, said, none of you are married yet. Most of you will be someday. Do you wonder how you will know when you have found your life's partner? Do you know what to look for in a mate? Do you want to know what makes for a happy marriage? I've wondered that too. In my temple, I have many couples who have been married a long time, 40, 50, 60, even 70 years, and I wanted to know their secret. How have you stayed together so long? So I asked them, one couple at a time, and we had long conversations in our office, in my office, and over the course of almost a year, they told me, each of these couples told me what they had come to learn. And you know what I found out? You know what they told me was the most important thing? It was not looks or intellect or politics or hobbies or sex or religion or travel or home, not even their children. These are all part of what kept them committed to each other, but none of them was the most important thing. While they all didn't find the same words to say it, what I heard them say was this: we have each held each other tenderly during our suffering. When times were hard, when one or both of us were hurting, when we needed someone to lean on or to hold us in our pain, we held each other. That is our secret. Then he turned and he wrote on the board, compassion. Just one word. He said this was their secret, compassion. And he says, look at the word, passion. Passion means many things. It could be intense desire, drive, fervor, but its original meaning, taken from the Passion of Christ, is really different. Passion means suffering. Compassion, suffering together, holding one another tenderly when there is pain. And the rabbi finished by saying, so what have I learned in my long life? What can I offer to one so young as you? Show mercy, no suffering, practice compassion. So he put his chalk down and he went to sit down. The bell rang and the class concluded. Everyone went to their next class. So I thought this was a very nice story, talking about compassion to this class full of 16 years old. And I was wondering, when we come here, we talk often about compassion. And Alameda Buddha is described as infinite wisdom, infinite compassion. So, kind of wondering, how can we use this story? Are the lessons of compassion the same in all the different religions or in different Buddhist teachings? Are they the same? What is the Buddhist perspective? And I found something that described Shin Buddhist compassion in a book by Reverend Taitetsu Unno. And this is what he wrote. The question most frequently asked of a Shin Buddhist is, what is your practice? What is your practice? And as a Buddhist, I think it's obvious many of us would think, first thing that comes to mind, the practice of compassion. So Unno Sensei says, our task is to manifest compassion in everyday life, beginning with members of our family and extending it into the community, into the world. Okay. Then he says, but When one really tries to practice compassion, express care, concern, empathy, and love, all the while respecting the autonomy and dignity of the other, one encounters a huge obstacle. And that obstacle is never the other, but one's own self-centered ego. So this awareness, knowing our ego, is the starting point of Shin Buddhist practice and the starting point of our trying to be compassionate. Okay? When the rabbi was speaking to the 16 years old, this was his conclusion to practice compassion. But Unno Sensei says, this is not the conclusion. This is the starting point, the beginning. Okay? As we practice compassion, we recognize that our own self-centeredness, our ego, is still tied to everything we try to do. Okay? That there's a self-motivation when we try to do these practices of compassion. I helped the blind lady across the street. I donated clothing to the homeless shelter. I worked 12 hours delivering food. These are all good things, but to some degree, identifying myself. Ego-driven activity. Our own efforts are not really pure, tainted to some degree with ego-centeredness. So, Sensei is pointing out that true compassion, true and pure compassion, is not our own doing, but comes from beyond the self, from what we call Alameda. Okay. So, Reverend Unno says the working of boundless compassion comes to nullify the ego and transforms it into its opposite. So even though we have this ego-centeredness, the boundless compassion of Alameda transforms that into its opposite, a pure compassion. So this is our practice. So we recognize our limitations. We also recognize the unlimited nature of Alameda. Okay? Opposites. Samsara, nirvana, finite, infinite, I, Alameda, everything dual and separate becomes whole and complete in the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, the practice of Namo Amida Butsu. Okay. So the one-dimensional on and on of life evolves into a life of depth and meaning that we all seek. And this comes from our recognition of all that is beyond ourselves. And this is what is conveyed when we say Namo Amida Butsu. Not my own world, but connecting my world to the infinite. Please join me in Gassho. Listen to these words. Awakening is dynamic, constantly evolving with life's realities. Unfolding from ego self to compassionate self, from enclosed self to open self, from foolish self to enlightened self. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda. 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 Thank you.
Thank you, Sensei. That was really beautiful. And I think a lot of us can agree that your bachan is the best model of bowing with pure intent. So thank you for sharing with us. Please stand for the Gata Ondokuzan on page 220. Okay, thank you to all those who helped with the altar preparations and with service. Thank you to Reverend Dennis for the YouTube setup, our organist, those who did the altar flowers, anyone who donated special altar offerings or refreshments, any newcomers here today would like to introduce themselves. Go ahead and stand up. Yeah, introduce yourself. Thank you.
So, hello everyone, my name is Patty. I found this place just online as I wanted to explore Buddhism and the service, and just really happy to be here.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Patty. Anyone else? Okay. Thanks for coming today. Everyone here is so kind, so. Okay, so we have a couple of announcements. The first one is that next Sunday, February 25th, is the BCAA Taikyo service. You can watch it online through YouTube or here at the temple at 10 a.m. And there's going to be Dharma school next weekend as well. And then there is an Agua meeting today at 11:30. Any other announcements? Go ahead.
You've heard me all say it over and over again, but we're showing the movie, Carving the Divine, and we have the forms now available for if you want to order a bento and come to service, have a bento, and then we can all walk over and see the movie together. It'll be in the next newsletter, but I do have some flyers today, so I hope you all come. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Any other announcements? Okay, so now Sensei will begin the Ask Reverend Dennis session.
Okay, this is always fun. We have Ask Reverend Dennis on the fourth Sunday, last Sunday of each month, and so because there's no service with me here next week, I'll be at the national meetings. Maybe you'll see me on the screen if you're here watching at the Taikyo service from BCA next week. So today is our Ask Reverend Dennis. Do we have any questions? Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Okay, so I did have one thought about talking about ekoku. Are you sure? No questions? Okay, think about it, So ekoku is when we chant, at the end of the chant, okay? We come to the final page and everyone gets real happy that we got to the end of the chanting. And today we did the Jusei again, okay? And when we get to the very end, there's a portion after the Nembutsu Naomanda, the Kanni Shiku Roku. So after every chant, we're chanting this. So why is this important that we need to chant this every single time we chant? The chant itself might vary, but we do this portion every time. So this is, ekoku means the transference of merit, okay? So the translation says, may this merit virtue be shared equally with all beings. May we together awaken the Bodhi mind and be born in the realm of serenity and joy. Okay, so this kind of reflects the Bodhisattva ideal of going towards our awakening together. Okay, not me first, and I want to accumulate all my merits and then get to the Pure Land, but we want to do it together. So we share our merits. And in other schools of Buddhism, chanting the words of the Buddha is considered something beneficial. So maybe the monks in the monastery, they're practicing and learning how to do these chants, and they come to a service together, chanting together. But when we share the merits, it's like we are chanting and extending the well-being, the ideas and thoughts of well-being, and sending them out into the universe. and it shares and benefits all beings. So in this sense, not only for the monk to improve his practice, but to share with all beings. And it reflects in the Buddha, historical Buddha, becoming enlightened. Should I just enjoy this awakening, enlightenment by myself? It's too hard to explain. I don't know what to say. People won't have the capacity to understand. Should I share it or not? I don't think I can share it properly. I don't think they can understand it properly. Finally, he decided, I must share. Okay, so beyond thinking of his own well-being, he's extending it to all. So this is why it's called the beginning of the turning on the wheel of the Dharma. So the Dharma goes from the Buddha to everyone else, to us, to first-time visitors, anybody, everybody, and it's extending. So this idea of merit is what we're saying in reciting the ekoku portion of the chant, to share this merit, extending it into the infinite. So basically, the merit is gained, comes to us from the infinite, and we share it back to the infinite. Okay. So this is the idea of this part of the chanting. So if you were to go to IBS and take a class, then they cut it up even further. There's merit transference in the phase of going towards awakening. There's merit transference in the phase of returning to share it with all others. Also ekoku, genso ekoku. And they teach you about all these things, how the thoughts develop and how they have come to be understood and recognized in different schools of Buddhism and such. But basic level, to awaken ourselves and to share this awakening with all other beings. Okay. Interesting, right? Now we know why we're chanting this every single time. Okay? And it's not just empty ritual, but there's a meaning behind the practice. So, any other? Ask Reverend Dennis. Yes.
I have actually so many questions I wouldn't even know where to start, but not to show my ignorance too much, I'm going to pick one. I was curious about the musical notation of the chanting. Maybe it goes back as far as some bujo that you sang
What
earlier.
page are you looking at?
The page 24.
Oh.
So, do you have any context of when the specific music notation was developed? Is it was it developed hand in hand with Buddhist chanting, or is this?
Yeah, the Sambujo is specific to Shin Buddhism.
And the way
All the wavy lines.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. When you take chanting class, you're taught about each of these, and so on the opposite page in Japanese, it's exactly the same, but we have different types of wavy lines, right? So we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and one of our members was trying to decipher and understand what is the difference. And so these are pitch lines, and each chant might start on its own pitch, and they're all very specific. And so, we have some wonderful chanting instructors who are able to remember and hit these pitches, and we have ministers who are tone deaf, and when you follow them, it's a train wreck. It really is. So sometimes it's difficult. Even, we might have 4 ministers sitting together, and if one of us is off, it pulls everybody off, so it's not so easy, but we are aware of this pitch that they're supposed to be. And the Sanbujo, if you look at the translation at the bottom, we're calling upon Tathagata Amida, okay, Amida. So not all Buddhist schools are recognizing Amida Buddha. we had a visitor, a Tibetan Buddhist, came to our temple in Ontario, and she said, why do you pick Amida of all the Buddhas, in Buddhism? Why do you pick Amida? And so the way we learn it, it's like Amida is the infinite. So all the other Buddhas are an aspect of Amida, So each of us is thinking, why is your thinking so small? She's thinking of me. Why is your thinking so small? I'm thinking of her. Why is your thinking so small? Right? So a different perspective completely. But here we're acknowledging Amida, Tathagata, Shakyamuni, the historical Buddha, and all the Buddhas of the 10 quarters is the third line, right? So we're acknowledging and calling upon Amida, Shakyamuni, all the Buddhas of the 10 quarters to enter this dojo, enter this place of practice. So as we're chanting this, our school of Buddhism, Honganji in Kyoto, Japan, they have chanting teachers, experts, and they do the pitches and the notations and how long, and then they disseminate that to the ministers, and we learn that. Okay, so it just kind of gets handed down. Here we do it quite often, maybe more than many temples, and even in Berkeley we have Nishi, which we are Nishi Honganji, and in history they cut the temple in half, east and west. Higashi Temple, they don't chant the Sambujo. The teachings are exactly the same, but they don't chant the Sambujo. The thoughts are the same. The thoughts are in their practice, but they don't chant specifically the Sambujo. When you come here, we chant it every Sunday, and it's kind of like a call and response, very pretty, and I really enjoy it, appreciate it. So the top line, the first line, kind of like Sensei's solo line, and then everyone joins in. San, ge, and when you follow those pitch lines, it's kind of like you're riding that line. You're on the roller coaster, and you're doing these jigs, right? And you have to feel that. You should feel that. And where there's a V, that's where you breathe. Okay? Okay? So these are pitch lines that you're following. So you can listen when I'm chanting the last syllable, Jo, O, Oo. And then you come in, and it's the same pitch. When I finish oo, your first sa. So my oo you listen to, and you come in on your sa, so yeah, it's very pretty. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
Kind of?
Also, my apologies, I just found page 21 and there's an explanation to it. I wasn't sure. It says here it is an equivalent representation of Western musical notation, and I was just curious whether this chanting was developed hand in hand with Buddhism, if this is like a practice that is this like historically dated back to.
Yeah. So on page 23, there's a little bit of introduction to the piece and where it was pulled from and such. And so, yeah, each of them have a different thing. Sometimes, if you flip the page again on 27, there's Shishindai, and we do that one on occasion too. Yeah, we should do that just to practice a different piece. So I think they both come from the same text, and they're each very pretty. So similar kind of three, this is like the three treasures in chanting, the Sambujo, Alameda, Shakyamuni, and all the Buddhas. And here in the Shishinrai, you're calling the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. So a little bit different in terms of the content of it, but they're each considered introductory chants that lead into the main body of the chant we will be doing. Okay, good question. One more? Hope it's short.
It is short. Does the temple in Japan, Hongonji, do they do more chants than this, or is this basically all of the Jogoshin chants?
It depends on the service. They do more, and some of them are difficult, more difficult. And so it takes a learning process to learn some of them. And so we usually don't involve ourselves, We're going to have Gatha practice. We haven't gotten chanting practice yet, right? So maybe in the next 100 years, huh? The second 100 years, Gathas. The third 100 years, chanting. Okay? So some are complex, and it depends. Every morning they do the Shoshinge. So if you go to Honganji and you're staying nearby, they have a 6 a.m. service, and people want to go, and they'll go and want to participate in how they chant the Shoshinge, and they do that. And the chanting of the Gobunsho, here primarily we do one of the on the white ashes is one that we read during our funeral services, and there are a number of Gobunsho chants, and when you go to the morning service, one of their chanting teachers chants the Gobunsho. And I always used to make a point to sit real close up front just so I could listen. And it's kind of like you get to be at this Pavarotti concert, and sit in the front row kind of thing. And these people are just incredible that you would be, really fortunate to learn from or to listen to. So rare opportunity for me that I would try to take advantage of. So yes, there are a number of chants. A lot of them they will use, and you would be familiar with them. Sometimes they are at a different pace and such, and so you have to be ready to know what they're going to do and things like that. So yeah. Okay, so we're kind of out of time, and there's a lot happening today. So we're going to conclude. Please join me in Gassho, where we will end this portion of the service. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Okay, so I'll relight the incense. Please come up to offer incense, and then we'll go downstairs and visit.
Sorry, always something. Here's a shoe. Keep wearing it.
Show me that.